Hey, greetings YouTube, this is Captain Machine, back for part 2 of the Ravenloft Mega Review, and this is quite paradoxical because while I should have done this first, thinking back, we're going to talk about what Ravenloft actually is. And when I say that, there are two possible answers. I mean, we could say that, well, Captain Machine, Ravenloft's a campaign setting, it's a game line, published by TSR and Wizards of the Coast and White Wolf. And you go, well done, job done, video over, turn off. But no, I'm talking about the actual setting, what it is metaphysically, as in what is written on paper. And that's a horrible, contrived way of saying it, but that's what we're going to talk about today, or what I'm going to talk about, and you're going to listen. If you don't listen, that's fine. It's called self-censorship. Read about it, or don't. Right. Now, D&D, or AD&D, or whatever you want to call it, has this concept called the multiverse. The multiverse is a new concept, or it's been used by countless science fiction and fantasy authors over the years. It's even appeared in TV. Sliders is a very good example of it boiled down to its chorus concept. Now, the guys at TSR, because we're going back that far, recognised quite quickly that most people used their own campaign settings. Although there were a chunk of people out there that didn't. They didn't have the time or the creativity, or a combination of the two, to make their own world. So what they did instead was they bought other people's, and that's basically what spurred them to release Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms, and then they did try an awful lot of other settings to, fill in the void, as it were, sell more books, be interesting. There was Dark Sun, which was desert related. There was Hollow Earth. There was Red Steel, Mistra, Spelljammer, Alquinima. I think there was an Oriental setting before Legend of the Five Rings even thought of it. Maybe they got the idea from them. And generally speaking, these were all worlds unto themselves, but they did, towards the end of TSR's lifespan anyway, they did hint that they were connected by the Great Wheel, which was the cosmology of D&D, to each other, and to all the other infinite number of settings that people had cooked up. In fact, high-level adventuring pretty much encouraged world hopping when AD&D was about. So it was not unusual that they invented some interesting concepts. One was the demiplane. Now, demiplanes are planes of existence which aren't big enough, or powerful enough, or strong enough, or important enough to actually be their own universe inside the multiverse. They're just a small pocket of creation. That's what Ravenloft is. Ravenloft is a demiplane. It doesn't have a shape or a size, so it's hard to describe it in any particular way, but it's ruled over by something known as the Dark Powers. What the Dark Powers are has never been specified, although it has been mentioned that Azalea did speak to them, or at least meet them, in the novel Lord of Necropolis. Now, generally speaking, most people don't consider that to be canon. So that was thrown out quite quickly, or at the very least it could be explained away by Azalean's own internal madness at the time. And he basically gave what he thought to be his enemy a form by thinking about it. But no one truly knows who or what the Dark Power is, if it is anything at all sentient. It could just be some causality in the universe, something that happens, and there is no explanation for it. What the Dark Power does is it takes really evil people. We're not talking classic D&D evil, because D&D is full of evil wizards and necromancers and dragons and murdering knights and all that sort of jazz. So no, what we're talking about is people that are internally evil, people that turn on their own core values as a person or a being. And it takes those people, it plucks them out of the real multiverse and plonks them down into what's called a domain, which is a small piece of land usually about the size of a country, although sometimes smaller, sometimes a lot smaller, to the point where one domain is about the size of a house, or much, much bigger, to the size of a nation. Although, generally speaking, nations and countries are the same thing, but I think you get the idea. And it sticks in there, and they can never leave. They can never leave the borders. What separates these borders? Well, generally speaking, it's the mist. The mist is the bit between domains. And it is very disorientating and quite terrifying for the people that are stuck there and live there. Because wandering into it can teleport you all over the shop and generally lead you astray, or take you to either bring you back to where you started or take you to another land entirely. The domain lords, however, have a more awkward problem. If they ever try to leave, they can't. They just are not able to. There's 101 ways that the dark powers can find a way of making sure they don't leave, or they just take a very heavy-handed approach of you can't walk any further past this point, which is what happens in the core. Not only that, but they're punished for their crimes, or they appear to be, because they're constantly tormented by the thing that they either most desired or most hated in their normal life. However, due to some cosmic karma, they appear to balance out by the fact that generally your domain lords are considerably more powerful now they're in Ravenloft than they were in real life. And the fact that the domain, being a domain lord, gives them power over their own domain. Well, specifically, it can close their borders, which either disorientates or even kills people trying to leave. So, people have always wondered what the dark powers are trying to do, and it's never been specified ever. And that's the beauty of it, because it gives you all that scope to play with yourself. I mean, as a GM, I'm never going to explain what the dark powers are, or even acknowledge their own existence, although I will have NPCs mention them and theorise their possible existence, and maybe even theorise what they are trying to do. But that is the mouthpiece of the NPC, not the GM. And there's a very, very key difference. And it should be always pointed out that is the case. Generally speaking, your average domain is a self-contained prison. If you ever read To Sleep with Evil, you'll understand the concept, because the domain lord there has no contact with the outside world. Granted, there are people he communicates with that are able to leave and come back, but he himself can never leave. Sometimes these domains become themed. Generally, either the same world or the same era spawned multiple Dark Lords, and their worlds get clustered together, so they actually acknowledge and they can see that there are other lands out there beyond the mist because they're connected. There's no mist anymore between those 2 points. And people, normal people, or even monsters, can walk freely between the two. However, the domain lords still cannot, which leads to some rather interesting discussions of what happens if they try. And like I said, it's up to the GM, but it can be as dramatic or as non-subtle as you want. But the ultimate truth of the matter is they never, ever, ever can leave. There are 2 notable exceptions to this. Now, I will mention those, but not in this video. At the core, which I've always said is about the size of Europe, but most people think is the size of Yorkshire due to the cannon's size, is the biggest and most well-known cluster of these domains, about 24 in total, and it's fluctuated considerably in its history. Although it seems to have stabilised to the point where people are starting to live normally upon it, which is interesting, a word as any. And that is where the majority of the material takes place. Although it is always hinted, it's always implied that beyond there are multiple little domains which are as varied and interesting as you would like them to be. The idea, of course, being you can make anything you want up. What you see in front of you in the books is not only what there is, not all there is, and a lot of people have gone to great efforts to make their own domains and publish them on the internet. So I'll leave some links in the side notes about that. Was it that way? I can never remember. Right. Well, I'm going to leave it for that for now, because that's what Ravenloft is. It's a interesting topic which can never really have its own conclusions, which is a dying shame. Apart from